Welcome back to Family Justice Vault. I'm Rosalind, 32, Financial Research Director from Charlotte, North Carolina. My parents planned a family vacation and forgot to include me. Except it wasn't forgetting. If your family has ever confused your independence with not needing to be loved, this story is yours. Drop a comment and subscribe. The clerk typed my name twice, checked the screen, and shook her head. No single reservation under Mercer. 2 rooms, Richard and Carol Mercer, then Catherine and Derek Hale. That's it. I set my suitcase down and called my mother. She picked up on the 4th ring, laughing at something Catherine said in the background. "Mom, there's no room booked for me." She paused the way she does when she's deciding how confused to sound. "Oh, honey, I thought you'd sort it out." "You always do." She said it brightly, like a compliment. Behind her, Catherine asked Derek if the pool was heated. My mother had planned a family vacation in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, 3 nights at a mountain lodge in peak October, and hadn't reserved a bed for her younger daughter. She hadn't forgot. Forgetting comes with a gasp and a scramble to fix it. This came with a laugh. 48 hours later, every person in my family would wish they'd booked that room. I built my life from nothing. Put myself through UT Knoxville on a scholarship and a job shelving books. 17 hours a week between classes. Graduating summa cum laude with nobody in the audience except Nadine, my roommate, who screamed my name so loud the dean flinched. My sister Catherine had her tuition paid by our grandfather Arthur, no questions asked, and dropped out after 1 term because the professors didn't challenge her. She married Derek Hale at 28. Had a son, Liam, at 31, and hadn't held a job in 7 years. Our parents never commented on the difference. They didn't have to. Catherine was the one you took care of. I was the one who took care of herself. And despite that, I drove 4 hours through the Smokies for every birthday, every holiday. I never missed. I thought showing up was enough to prove I belonged. Mom called in August. "We're all going to the mountains. Catherine found this gorgeous lodge in Gatlinburg." I asked about rooms. "Your father handled it." I texted Dad that night, "Am I in room 2 or 3? 40 minutes later, all set. "Don't worry, I believed him. Your father tells you it's handled. You trust it." I requested 3 days off, my first vacation time in over a year, packed hiking boots, a novel, and a bottle of Malbec I planned to open with my mother on the balcony. I pictured Catherine and me on a trail with Liam between us. I pictured my father reading on the porch. I drove west on I-40, then south through the Smokies, the October leaves doing exactly what the brochures promised. I pulled into the lodge at 3 p.m. Timber frame, rocking chairs, a stone chimney trailing smoke. The clerk, Alyssa, smiled, typed, then her smile faded. "I have 2 rooms under Mercer. There's no single reservation. We're sold out, peak season, booked for months." I was still at the desk when the lobby doors opened and Liam's voice bounced off the rafters. Catherine walked in with new boots and a quilted vest, Derek behind her with duffel bags. She saw my suitcase and stopped, not surprised, deciding how to play it. "What's the problem?" she said, loud enough that a family at the other end of the counter turned. I told her there was no room for me. She shifted Liam to her hip. "We reserved rooms for me, my husband, and my child. We're the real family." She said it like explaining a seating chart to a caterer. Derek smirked. My mother studied the floor. My father stood 6 feet away, scrolling his phone, present in body and absent in every way that counted. I picked up my suitcase. "Then I'll leave." Quiet, flat, the way I'd read a number in a board meeting. I walked past the fireplace, past the rocking chairs, down to my car, where the wine still sat on the passenger seat. My mother's voice cut across the gravel. "Rosalind, don't be dramatic, we can figure something out." I didn't turn around. I pulled out of the lot with her shrinking in the rearview, mouth still open, standing on a porch that had room for everyone but me. I drove 20 minutes north to Sevierville, where the tourist strip thins and the mountains stop performing. The Riverbend Inn sat behind a row of sycamores. A woman behind the counter, glasses on a chain, gave me room 7, ground floor, river view, $89 a night. $89. That's what it would have cost my parents to book a third room. They'd spent $1,300 on 2 rooms and couldn't find 89 more for the daughter who drove 4 hours to be there. By the time I sat on that bed, I had 34 missed calls. 12 texts from my mother mapped her emotional arc with the precision of a stock chart. "This is ridiculous. You're ruining the trip. Call me back. Catherine is upset." And finally, fine. Be that way. Not one line placed the weight anywhere except on me. I opened the Malbec, poured it into a paper cup, and drank alone in a room that cost less than my sister's new boots. The river outside kept moving in the dark. It didn't care about any of this. That was the most comforting thing I'd heard all day. I should tell you about Christmas, 3 years earlier. I drove 4 hours through an ice storm with 4 wrapped gifts I'd spent a month choosing: a cashmere scarf for Mom, a fishing reel for Dad, a Build-A-Bear for Liam, a journal for Catherine. We opened presents around the tree. Catherine went first. She always went first. Mom and Dad gave her a diamond tennis bracelet, full production, Derek filming it on his phone. Then Catherine handed me a candle. Vanilla, still in the drugstore bag, $4.99 clearance sticker on the bottom. "I didn't know what you'd want," Mom said brightly, like not knowing your daughter was a reasonable defense for a $5 candle beside a diamond bracelet. I said thank you. I smiled. I never burned it. It still sits on my shelf, behind a row of books where I don't have to look at it but always know it's there. Then Catherine's wedding, 2 years before the lodge. 200 guests, a string quartet. I wasn't in the bridal party. Catherine told me 6 months out, gently, the way you deliver news to someone you don't respect enough to be honest with. "We didn't want to burden you with bridesmaid costs." I could have covered the dress from 1 day's pay. I sat in the back row instead, arrived at 7 a.m. To set up, arranged 200 centerpieces, and stayed after to clean until midnight while Derek's brother, slightly drunk, grinned and asked if I was the hired help. No thank you text. Not that day, not ever. Morning at the inn, light came through the window in a long stripe. I scrolled my photo library, 50 family photos across 5 years, and I was in 3 of them, half cut from the frame in 2. I opened the family group chat and scrolled back 6 months. My name appeared less than anyone's, and only attached to a task. "Rosalind, can you bring the chairs?" "Rosalind, can you grab ice?" Never "how are you?" Never "we missed you." This wasn't forgetfulness. Forgetfulness is random. This was structured. I was included when labor was needed and excluded when belonging was distributed. I called Nadine. I told her everything. She listened completely, then said, "When are you going to stop driving 4 hours to prove you belong to people who won't save you a chair?" She wasn't being cruel. She was being accurate, which is worse, because accuracy doesn't leave you anywhere to hide. Sunday morning, the group chat lit up. Catherine posted a pool selfie, family time in the mountains, followed by heart emojis. Mom hearted it. Dad gave it a thumbs up. My name appeared nowhere. Not my absence, not one message acknowledging that a daughter had driven 4 hours, been told she wasn't real family, and left. Cousin Denise texted, "Are you on that trip?" "I don't see you in any photos." I told her I'd left. She sent back a single heart. No commentary, just presence from a corner of my family I'd never thought to lean on. Monday morning, watching a heron at the river's edge, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Mom says you can share Kay's room if you come back." We shouldn't book 2 rooms for someone who doesn't even bring anyone. I read it twice. He'd been given the chance to apologize and instead reduced me to a headcount. 32 years of scholarships and 60-hour weeks, measured by whether I had a husband or a child to fill the other bed. I took a screenshot. I didn't delete it. I didn't respond. I kept it the way I kept the candle, not to look at, but to remember I wasn't making this up. I walked along the river that afternoon and realized I didn't want an apology anymore. An apology from any of them would just reset the clock, put me back at the starting line, give me permission to drive 4 hours again and wait for the next lobby. I was done. Not with anger. Anger requires energy I'd already spent. I would stop carrying lumber to a house that didn't have a room for me. My grandfather, Arthur Mercer, 82, lived alone on Norris Lake. He'd built a construction supply company from a flatbed truck and 50 borrowed dollars, grown it to 11 locations, sold it in 2010. He still made his coffee at 5 a.m. Because that's when the day started. I told him the facts, no embellishment. Arthur doesn't respond to embellishment, he responds to information. Long silence. Then your grandmother would have left too. Over dinner at his kitchen table the following Saturday, he asked pointed questions, the kind he'd ask a foreman. How much is Catherine's mortgage? Does Derek make enough to cover it? What does your father actually do at that company? A consulting title attached to the business he'd sold. No measurable duties. Then he said, I've been sending your parents and Catherine $8,000 a month for 13 years. Over $1 million. Not one of them had built anything with it. How much have I sent you? He asked. Nothing, Grandpa, I never asked. He nodded. I know. Then, wiping his hands on a dish towel, I'm hosting Thanksgiving this year. Whole family? He didn't explain. Arthur announces things the way the weather does. It arrives, and you adjust. 5 weeks later, Mom restarted the group chat like nothing had happened. Thanksgiving at Grandpa's. Who's bringing what? Catherine, wine on the family credit card Arthur paid. Mom, green bean casserole. Rosalind, can you bring your sweet potato casserole? Everyone loves it. Excluded from a vacation, told I wasn't real family, informed I wasn't worth a hotel room, and 6 weeks later, expected to bake for the same people. The audacity wasn't even audacity. It was habit. I typed back, I'll be there. No emoji, they saw compliance. They didn't see the screenshot still saved on my phone. A week before Thanksgiving, Catherine posted the trip photos, a full carousel, captioned * grateful for the ones who matter most. 214 likes. Not one person asked where I was. Denise asked me directly what happened, and I told her plainly. She told Aunt Phyllis. Phyllis called me the next day. Your grandmother would be heartbroken. The truth was moving through the family now, not as gossip, but as fact. Thanksgiving morning, I drove to Arthur's house before 8, while mist still sat on the lake. We set 22 places with Dorothy's china. Guests arrived, Philly's Uncle Gene, Denise with a pecan pie, Arthur's old construction friends. Then my parents in the Buick, and behind them Catherine, Derek, and Liam, Catherine in a new cashmere coat. Dinner filled the house. Arthur said grace, for the food, the family, and the truth, and 22 people said amen. Catherine held court, telling bright stories from the trip, then lifted her glass. To family. To the ones who show up for each other through thick and thin. She looked at me for half a second when she said show up. I held my glass through the toast and set it down without drinking. Later, clearing plates in the kitchen, Catherine followed me. Are you going to be weird all night? I'm not being weird, Catherine. Then stop acting like the victim. You left. That was your choice. You didn't book me a room. You could have figured it out yourself. You always do. There it was, the family's oldest program, running again. Over dessert, the table loosened, and Catherine, laughing with Denise, said, and then Rosalind just left, right out of the lobby, out of nowhere. We're all having a wonderful time and she walks out so dramatic. Another polished anecdote about difficult Rosalind. The table turned toward me, slow, face by face. I looked at Arthur. He gave the smallest nod, not permission, just checking whether I could handle what came next. I set my coffee cup down. I didn't stand. I spoke in the voice I use for quarterly presentations, level, measured. Catherine, you're right, I left. 22 people went still. But you left out the part where you didn't book me a room. You stood in that lobby and told strangers we reserved rooms for the real family. Her face changed, not guilt, but the rigid attention of someone hearing her own words come back at her. I turned to my father. And Dad, you texted me the next morning that we shouldn't book 2 rooms for someone who doesn't even bring anyone. Richard looked at his plate. Carol's hand went to her mouth. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm telling you what happened in front of people who should have heard it a long time ago. Catherine exploded. You're unbelievable. You're going to sit at Grandpa's table and play the victim. You threw a tantrum and drove away. Derek leaned in. She's always been like this, dramatic. Aunt Phillies cut him off, voice flat as a closed door. Catherine. Sit down. Catherine turned back to me, shaking. You've always been jealous. You can't stand that I have a husband and a child and a life. I didn't respond. The room had already made its judgment, not from anything I'd said, but from the picture in front of them. Arthur set down his coffee cup. Enough! He stood slowly, deliberate. I started working at 16, built a company from a flatbed, and $50 I borrowed from Dorothy's father. Never asked for a handout, never expected one. He looked at Richard, at Carol, at Catherine. In 13 years, I've sent this family over $1 million. Not one person who took that money has built a single thing. He looked at me. The only one who never asked me for a cent is the only one who turned out like your grandmother. He sat down. Catherine opened her mouth. I'm done, Catherine. Eat your pie. Final, clean, the period at the end of a sentence that didn't need a second draft. She did not eat her pie. They left fast, the retreat of people who know the ground has shifted. In the kitchen doorway, Catherine, Liam on her hip, whispered, Do you know what you've done? He's going to cut us off because of your little performance. I didn't ask him to do anything, Catherine. You didn't have to. You just had to play the martyr. I watched her reach for a response and find the shelf empty. She grabbed her coat and left without another word. That evening on the porch, my father stood at the rail, back to me. I shouldn't have sent that text. No, you shouldn't have. I didn't mean it the way. You meant every word, Dad. You just didn't think I'd say them out loud. He scuffed the porch boards like Liam does when he's been told to apologize. Are you going to be okay? I rocked the chair once. I've been okay for 32 years without a room, a chair, or a place in the photo. I'll keep being okay. He walked down to the Buick, where Carol sat crying in the passenger seat, and they disappeared around the bend. 6 weeks after Thanksgiving, the money stopped. No announcement, no letter. December 1st came, and the $8,000 transfer that had run for 13 years simply didn't appear. Catherine and Derek sold the lifestyle first. The credit card, gone. Derek picked up Saturday shifts at the dealership. Catherine got a part-time job at a home goods store, her first in 7 years. She called me in January, not to apologize, but to ask how to format a resume. I walked her through it line by line. Helping her didn't require pretending the lobby never happened. My parents downsized. The 4-bedroom house Arthur's money had floated for a decade went on the market. They moved to a 2-bedroom apartment, and Richard, 60 years old, took a job as a facilities coordinator at a community college. I won't pretend I felt nothing watching that. But it wasn't satisfaction. It was the complicated tenderness of watching someone you love face a truth they'd spent 30 years avoiding. Carol texted in January, no preamble. I'm sorry about the trip. I'm sorry about a lot of things. First time she'd typed that word to me in 32 years. I waited 2 days, then replied, I know, Mom. The door stayed open, not wide. Open, spring came to Norris Lake with cherry blossoms along the road, petals landing on the gravel like confetti nobody organized. Arthur had 2 coffees already poured on the porch, steam rising from Dorothy's cups. I sat in the second rocking chair, the one that had always been there, the one that had always been mine, even when I didn't know it. You know the best thing about building something yourself, he said. Tell me. Nobody can take it from you because they never gave it to you in the first place. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do isn't walking out of that lobby. It's walking back to the table, looking your family in the eye and telling the truth, not with anger, not with revenge, but with your own voice on your own terms. If Rosalind's 32 years of silence remind you of your own, maybe it's time to set down your suitcase and speak. Share this with someone who's been the reliable one. Leave a comment and subscribe. The next story is already waiting.